Whoa, okay.
Okay. Hey guys, I'm Meera Bhatt, and today on the College and Careers interview series, I'm so honored and super excited to be speaking with a role model and someone who constantly inspires me and so many other people, Mr. Hasan Minhaj. He's a comedian, entertainer, actor, host, best known for the Patriot Act and Homecoming King, and most importantly, for breaking stereotypes for brown kids and Desi and Asian kids everywhere. So welcome, Hasan.
Thanks, Meera. Thanks for having me. I thought you were gonna say most importantly known for being married to Bina. I thought you were about to drop that.
That too.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone already knows who you are, but and I've watched a lot of your interviews, of course, and know a lot about your journey. But if you could briefly summarize your extremely successful professional life from, Googling how to be a comedian to where you are now.
Yeah. So I was a speech and debate kid in high school. I stumbled into forensics and public speaking competitions. So if anyone was a speech and debate kid, impromptu public speaking was the event that I competed in. My high school teacher, Ms. Takeuchi, she encouraged me to do it. I signed up. I realized I was just kind of naturally good at riffing off the top of the dome, getting up and debating people impromptu and kind of making fun of everything that was going on, pulling back the curtain, making fun of the topic that we were debating, sometimes making fun of the other kids, the parents that were the judges, the environment that we were in, the leaky roof in the gymnasium that we were debating in. All these things just kind of like engendered empathy and kind of broke the tension of the room. And everybody was taking forensics very seriously and speech and debate very seriously. And I got to win this tournament. And I just kind of was rolling with it and having a lot of
Right.
fun. And I didn't realize until college when I first started seeing stand up comedy video clips, that was the moment where it clicked for me. Oh, this is funny speech and debate. And
Right.
nobody had ever explained it to me that way. Like, so when I
Um,
when I told that to my friends, I go, "Oh, this is funny forensics." They're like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm telling you, they're just making an argument, but they're constructing it in a funny way. It's the same
right.
idea. Pick a side to an issue, whether it's the pro opinion, the contrarian opinion, and then give funny examples or anecdotes or metaphors as to why that logic is sound. And so high school gave me the confidence to realize that I could do something like that. And at the time, I didn't know that was a gift that I had because it was something that really wasn't valued by society or our community specifically. And then when I
Yeah.
got to college, I realized, oh, this could be something that has value because there's a whole industry around it. It's called comedy. There's comedy clubs, and started chipping away from there. Was doing stand-up comedy for about 10 years. Got hired at the Daily Show. At the time, it was called the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. John hired me. Was a senior correspondent on the show for about 4 years. Then I left the show and then did Patriot Act, and here we are.
Yeah, that's so interesting how I guess like your high school experience that maybe you didn't think so much of at the time kind of shaped your whole life.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to kind of touch off the point that you said, like, your career path wasn't something conventional and traditional, especially for, the South Asian community. So what do you recommend for kids who want to go into that non-conventional, non-traditional, and more creative profession? And how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, I would say something to keep in mind just as a mental framework and model for kids to think about. And I think about this not only for myself, I'm 35, so I still have a long way to go too. I know I sometimes I feel old, but I also feel very young. People are like, oh, bro, you're old, but I actually feel very young. I feel like everything's just really starting and clicking into place. But I
Hmm.
think about this all the time, specifically with our parents. You know, they gave us a set of rules to operate in the world, right? My parents immigrated here in 82. I was born in 1985. And the first sort of 20 to 25 years of my life, my parents set out these rules. They were like, you need to study really hard. You need to be a doctor or a pharmacist or a lawyer or a dentist. And that will prepare you for the world. And by the time I came of age and I hit age 20, 25, and by the time I hit 30, I realized, oh, the world had completely changed. So all my friends that ended up going the med school route or not getting into an American med school and then going into the Caribbean med school and accruing a ton of debt and then coming back, and they woke up one day and they were 32 or 33 and they were like, what did I do? I felt like I followed all the rules, but by the time I came of age to actually execute on my dreams and execute on my life and really live my life, the world had completely changed. And so one of the things that I'm very mindful of is always being aware of the fact that there are no set rules. And the people that have been most successful are the ones that break the hegemony and the existing structures that be. Like your favorite musician, your favorite politician, your favorite author, your favorite artist, all of them, your favorite entrepreneur, all of them saw something that existed and they did not conform and they were fearless. And so that's something that I would advise everybody to do. Understand that, yes, people are going to give you a set of rules. You have to do this, 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 and this. Chances are those rules may shift with time. So be very wary of those things. Be very wary of people, even if they're your parents, that speak in absolutes. And then I think the other thing that will always be incredibly useful is identify a problem somewhere in the world. And if your gift allows you to provide a solution to that, do everything you can to be part of that solution. And those are ways that the world rewards you immensely. Like even as a small example, when I was launching Patriot Act, I said, there's like 12 different shows that all analyze what Trump does day in and day out. But the world is such a bigger place.
Right.
So I'm going to do my version of a news, topical comedy, graphics, data-driven type show, but it's going to be about the rest of the 189 countries in the world. It's going to be about China and India and Saudi Arabia and the Philippines and Brazil and all these other things that are happening across the world that don't get mentioned in the Trump universe. And that to me was the solution that I was trying to fix, because there's so many people around the world that just weren't being spoken to. The only news given from America was Trump news.
Right. Well, that's really good advice. And I think the first part of what you said of like not conforming and like stepping out if your, gift allows you to, you've done like perfectly. And you're like one of those role models for so many people. So I think everyone can, learn a lot from that. Okay. So going off of that, what habits and practices keep you motivated, grounded, and driven in your career, in your professional life? If you don't have any, that's okay.
No, I would say, I'm married to my college sweetheart. So Bina is one of those people that has known me the longest. And I met her in 2004. So
that's when I was born.
so she's been there with me every single step of my journey. And anytime I'm out of pocket, she definitely checks me. Like she'll let me know what time it is. And I think that's really important. And for a comedian to be able to take the piss out of yourself and not take yourself so seriously, that's really important. The moment you start taking yourself too seriously, and you can't make jokes, things get really bad. You become kind of a monster. So I'm trying to always, embrace the troll and know that it's okay to laugh at yourself,
Yeah.
And Bina checks me for sure.
Well, I guess that's good part for everyone to have someone like that. Okay, so I know that every day probably doesn't look the same for you, given that you don't have like the typical 9-to-5 job, and depending on like what project you're working on. But what does your workday look like? Maybe right now or previously?
Yeah, so just recently I was shooting a show for Apple called The Morning Show. So my life in that way was kind of entirely structured around getting myself ready for the role, doing my coaching with my acting coach, then going to set, doing my scenes, coming back to the hotel, preparing my future scenes for future episodes, and then just kind of having a full monastic, dedicated life built around, hey, how do I pour myself entirely into this project? And so that's really kind of how I compartmentalize things. Now that I've wrapped that, I'm working on my next one-man show, which is like the follow-up to Homecoming King. So my life right now is kind of completely dedicated to writing the material, going up in pop-up shows around New York City and around the country, workshopping the material before we take it into the big theaters this fall. So, every project has very specific needs. You kind of have to figure out what's the end point? What are you trying to do? Hey, what's that big scene that you're doing on set for that movie or for that TV show? Then work backwards. What's the prep that I got to do from there? I got a big tour coming up. I want to shoot my next special. It's going to be about this. All right, let's work backwards. What are the themes that you want to hit? What are the stories that you want to hit? What's the material that you want to have? Okay, now you have to start vomiting that out, workshopping it. So you start working all the way backwards to the day that, you and I are speaking, Monday, May 17th. All right, my assignment for today, if I want to get here, has to be this.
Right. Well, that's super cool to hear about your new project. That's exciting. And I think that it kind of works the same in a lot of professions. Like even if you have like professional goals or academic goals, for me right now, as a high school student who will soon be applying to college, like I want to be here. So like, what do I have to do to get there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So given that your career has already reached such great heights and you've accomplished, what most people can only dream of in a lifetime, where do you see yourself in 10 years? What are you aspiring to continue achieving?
Yeah, to me, I think I just try to honor like true North Star principles. I'm really lucky. I'm just super lucky that I have gotten the opportunities that I've gotten. I can't explain
Mhm.
to you as to why I was chosen or why those things came to be. So really all I try to do is kind of um, focus on two primary objectives. And the first is, be as raw and as authentic as I am on WhatsApp and bring that to the mainstream. I want to take our WhatsApp and living room conversations to the mainstream, from the margins to the mainstream.
Right.
That's like one of my primary goals. How do I split the difference between who I am at work, who I am in social settings, and who I am like with my friends? Like that's
Hmm.
who Hassan really is. So what I'm
Right.
going to do is close that gap. And when you see me on stage or when you see me on the show, people feel like, yo, I really know this person. To me, that
Yeah.
means being really authentic and honest as an artist. So that's my primary goal. Be as raw as you are on WhatsApp in real life and in your art. And then the second is to push yourself. So David Bowie has this really great quote where he talks about any artist has their 2 feet on the ground in the shallow end of a pool. And if you think about art and, living a creative life, you should think about, as you're entering the deep end, your feet start leaving the shallow end of the pool. And just as your feet are going into that, that feeling is just as you're entering the deep end and you're like,
Yeah.
it's not 3.5 feet. Oh, it's 4. Oh, it's 5. That
Yeah.
moment right there, that's the sweet spot. That's where you should put yourself in either an artistic situation, a creative situation, physical situation. Hey, try to swim in the deep end just a little bit. And I figure if I live my life and my creative life by those two first principles, um, hopefully the work that I do for the rest of my life will feel meaningful and feel fulfilling to me and hopefully other people as well.
Wow, that's really interesting. I never like thought about it that way. That's a great piece of advice to, I guess, live by.
Yeah.
Um,
Ask yourself, does this scare me a little bit? Do I feel my toes leaving the ground? Like, does this, in Hindi we call it like that feeling of good goody, like that little like tickle in your stomach. Is this giving me that
yeah.
feeling? Because you know what it's like when both your feet are on the ground. You know what it's like
Mhm.
when like all your friends are wearing that outfit from Zara, or all your friends are doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, yeah,
they're choosing to apply to that college or that job. You're like, yeah, I know what this is. But there's always that thing of like, you're like, what if I did my hair this way? Or what if I wore this color hat? Just these small everyday things. What if I, decided to mix it up in my workout today and do this? What if I said this joke that really made me laugh at home? That
Mhm.
that to me means that you're taking risks and you're living an artistically fulfilled life.
Wow, that's really profound. Okay, so if you could go back and give 18-year-old Hassan one piece of advice, what would you say?
I would say try not to think about all the negative things that can happen. So oftentimes in Desi households, we are driven by like two core philosophies: fear and compliance. We're afraid of our parents. We're afraid of the community. We're afraid of lo kya kenge. We're afraid of what other people think. We're afraid of everything. All these
Yeah.
things can go bad, right? And then compliance is like, we generally tend to follow the rules. We don't want to be loud. We don't want to make our presence felt. We don't want to speak up in class. We don't want to swing for the fences. We want to play it safe. Kind of what I call darpoke mentality, scaredy cat mentality. So
Mhm.
you operate from fear or compliance. You're playing defense, right? You're thinking of
Right.
the negative things that could happen. You're afraid of poverty. You're afraid of fear. You're afraid of humiliation. You're afraid of so many different emotions. I would encourage everybody, and I try to remind myself, instead of thinking about all the negative black swan events that could happen, think about all the positive black swan events that could happen to you if you were to choose to apply to that school, or if you were to choose to ask that person out, or if you were to choose to, um, you know, take that improv class or that dance class or that pottery class or that art class that you were always thinking about, or if
Right.
you were to just shoot that cold email and say, hey, I'd love to intern for you. Try to frame the world that way. And to me, that's just a fundamental thinking between like having a defensive mindset where you're always playing defense and hedging versus like an abundance mindset of like, what if this were to work out? What if it were to click? What if they were to choose me? What if, this thing were to fall my way? That to me is really important because I remember when I did the White House Correspondents' Dinner in 2017, it was Trump's first year in office. Nobody wanted to do that gig because they
Mhm.
said there's nothing to gain here. It's, it's,
Right.
it's too combative. The president won't like it. The press is in a combative relationship with the president. And when I
Mhm.
got called to do it, I figured, but what if it went great? What if it actually went really, really, really well? You know?
Right.
And I tried to use that as kind of like my North Star.
That's so inspiring, hearing that. And I think that even implementing that to like a little skill every day, like you said, can truly like change everything. Um, okay, so let's see. Um, how do you maintain like a good work-life balance? Like you said, you're like super busy shooting new things, and I guess your like life is probably taken over by work at times, but how do you like make that bridge? I know you have like two little ones, so how do you?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like my sort of life and like my schedule, depending from project to project, really varies where I might be over indexed in one area and
Mhm.
then not really super, you know, involved in a certain area. So what I mean by that is, with COVID these past 14, 15 months, as soon as Patriot Act season 6 ended, I had all this extra time to be with my newborn son, to be with my
Okay.
3-year-old daughter. And so daddy time during lockdown went up exponentially, right? Like I was there just changing diapers, playing, going to the park, reading, all these things, like from 6:30 a.m., when they get up to, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night when they go to sleep. I was just with them all day,
Right.
in a really cool way. And then when it came time to film, I had to go to LA and I was away for them for,
Mhm.
weeks at a time.
Right.
So my balance has been a little bit different where I think in the macro overall, when you take the actual mean average of it, yeah, it seems balanced, but depending from project to project and what I'm doing in life, it might over index one way. But I'm very lucky that I have a supportive system around me. I have great in-laws. Bina's mom is fantastic. Her dad is fantastic. Both my parents are really great. Luckily, knock on wood, everybody's still healthy. So I just have a really great support system around me too. And I have a great partner who kind of understands and has been with me since day one. So she kind of really gets what it means to live an artistic life.
That's wonderful. And I think that that's important for everyone to find. So, as I look into like, what do I want to do? Like, I want to have a life. I don't want to just like be working. So,
Right.
interesting to hear that. Okay, so I just want to round out with like one more question. So, from your unique perspective, what are like the most exciting and emerging fields or industries in like the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah, I think something that really excites me is the mass exodus and decentralization from centralized institutions. And there's a lot of stuff that's being talked about right now, but I
Mhm.
think these places in the execution over the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to see a massive inflection point. And so I'll give you a couple examples that are just really exciting. And then, people can start thinking about what are the opportunities that fall underneath that.
Right,
I lived through both the internet revolution, which was in the .com sort of early beginnings, mid to late 90s.
right.
Dot first, I saw that first kind of major inflection point. Then I lived through, and I'm currently living through the second major inflection point, which is called Web 2.0, social media, from
Mhm.
2008 to here we are, 2021. Maybe, that social media started in like the early to mid 2000s, maybe a little bit earlier, 2005 perhaps. Now we're in, I think, this third wave, which is decentralized media, meaning we're seeing that with cryptocurrencies. We're seeing that with people leaving major metropolitan cities, whether it's Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York, and people are going to Florida, people are going to Texas, people are leaving the country. Remote work is becoming more popular. Again, these centralized cities and businesses are now being kind of broken, and the rise of kind of individual based city states and communities and ideas are really flourishing. And I think that main concept of decentralized media and communication and currency, this is going to shape the world. This will be Web 3.0. It'll be the next big inflection point. You and I will communicate with each other. You'll send me a smart contract over the blockchain to do this. I'll sign it. We'll go back and forth. All of this friction in the system will be gone, right? It'll just be through me and you directly. And we're going to see a massive shift from what we've seen over the past century. Remember, trust started with the government. People don't really trust governments anymore. Then it went to the corporation. People don't trust corporations anymore. We've seen massive furloughs and layoffs, and hey, the big guy isn't looking out for the little guy. Now it's about trusting individuals. And the ethos of that is a decentralized sort of state, a decentralized media system, a decentralized banking system that allows you and I to communicate with each other. How those industries are now built on top of that sort of philosophical idea, we'll see. I don't have the answers, but that's where things get really interesting. And just like every inflection point, just be mindful, right? With Web 1.0, there was Netscape and Yahoo and AOL and Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves, and Google came along. But the ethos was right. Hey, what if there was a place that just you could search for anything written in the world, right? That was the core ethos. And then we slowly figured it out over time. So I think this idea of decentralized over centralized is going to emerge over these next 10 to 20 years. And how the next generation and my generation builds on top of that fundamental idea is yet to be seen. But I think the future is really exciting.
That's a really interesting standpoint. You know, I haven't heard that a lot from the interviews I've done so far, but I think that makes a lot of sense and it's very logical.
What were people saying, like VR or something, or science or something?
Yeah, people say like big data, public health, AI, stuff like that. I mean, that's all like, I think pretty obvious, but I think what you said is like also kind of there, but I guess not everyone thinks about it that way.
And I'm obviously being just like super, super big picture. I'm not being like specific, like you need to make this app. I mean, if I knew what it was, I would probably try to do it. So I don't know. This is just a gut feeling. What do I know? I'm just a comedian.
Yeah, you're not just a comedian. Okay. So thank you so much. And I just want to say that this has been a dream come true. So thank you. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with me. And I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure so many others will benefit as well. So thank you.
No, thank you. And I'm so glad you took the time to chat with me. It means a lot.
Yeah.